Good evening, everyone. My name is John Murphy. I'm a professor here at the University of Connecticut's Digital Media and Design Department, focusing on social media. Welcome to UConn DMD's coverage of the 2021 Oscars. This year's Oscars will be unique as they are taking place during COVID-19 and not taking place in the usual grand manner where we typically see live and in person. Tonight, we will be discussing what our social media analytics center team saw in their research as it pertains to a number of interesting topics. The movie industry is going through some significant change, both due to the pandemic and the increasing use of streaming capabilities to view film. Also tonight, we will have a special guest join us from Los Angeles in our Nikki Stier's Justice segment, as Nikki seeks insider information from industry executives. So with all that behind us, let's get started. The first topic we're going to look at tonight is trending hashtags. What are people talking about online? And with that, we have Emily and Bryn covering that. Emily, Bryn, what do you guys have?
Yeah, so thanks, John. I was in charge of tracking the hashtag Oscar noms. And when looking at this hashtag in Talkwalker for social listening, I found 62.5 total engagements with this hashtag within the past 30 days. As you can see, I also displayed a graph that shows a visual representation of the engagement and conversation with this hashtag over that same time period. And then some key points and information I found. There was a huge spike in engagement on April 10th. Bill Maher, a talk show host for the show Real Time with Bill Maher, gave his 2 cents on the Oscars this year. He took a few hits at the Academy for the Best Picture nominations, being pretty heavy and depressing films after having such a hard year. He did not think that was a wise choice. And as you can see on the screen, I took a screenshot of his tweet, quote, "Would it kill Hollywood to once in a while make a movie that doesn't make me want to take a bath with a toaster?" And he talks about how movies help people escape the hardships, especially with the year that we had, and that having all these depressing nominations could contribute to the fewer audience that we've seen like engaged in the Oscars in general this year. He said, like, no wonder why they're losing audience for this year's show. And then lastly, that second spike on the graph was from the Spirit Awards show on the 22nd. And of course, this hashtag is going to gain engagement, as you can see, days leading up to and the day of the Oscars, especially when those nomination winners are released tonight. So I will be excited to look at this hashtag while the show is going on, as well as Monday after the show.
You know, before we go to the next speaker, Emily, Bryn, could you introduce yourself so that people in the audience know who you are?
Yeah, sorry, my name is Bryn Thomas.
And where are you from, Bryn?
I am from Virginia, but I am currently living in Bridgeport, Connecticut right now.
Great. So, Emily, are you going to talk about the same topic? Because I have a comment on this trending hashtag, especially Bill Maher's. So why don't I jump in now before we go to Emily? I can't hold back. So Amber and I were looking to watch some movies last night, and I have to say this group, Bill Maher, is spot on. I can see why it trended. These movies were so depressing or deep and serious. I mean, especially during the pandemic, you know, COVID-19, it would have been nice to have something that's a distraction, but boy, it was a rough group.
Yeah, it's interesting too, John, because this is collectively, when you look at box office gross because of the pandemic, this is the lowest grossing Oscars of all time. And there's been a few voters who were saying that this year kind of deserves an asterisk because so many films had to move off of their release dates this year to next year. So it's a different competition. It definitely feels like a competition of Sundance films, which tend to be a little bit heavier and more artsy than the more commercial counterparts.
Yeah, so I think as we go through the evening and all the students share the data that we're seeing behind these films, there's probably a lot of factors, COVID-19, the topics of the films, streaming versus being in the theater. There's probably a lot of layers here that added up to the lowest grossing ever, for sure. Emily, did you I know you had more you wanted to talk about here.
Yeah, my name's Emily. I'm from South Windsor, Connecticut, and I was in charge of the hashtag Oscars, which actually the results, it was very low for a while and just started gradually spiking, and then really spiked today with a lot more search results. But for it being Oscars, it seemed like lower than what it normally would be if it was in person. And it was mostly positive sentiment, which 45.7% positive and only 5.2% negative, which I thought was surprising. And the negative seemed to just be talking about the nominations, not really too much about that show itself. And for some other trending hashtags related to the Oscars, one I noticed was NOMADLAND, which was one of the nominations. And it was, the results for that one were very positive. And also it was interesting that I did see a lot of results that were in like Spanish too, because the Oscars, like that hashtag was trending in North America and South America, like those are the most popular places. But I thought that was really interesting.
Emily, do you have the data in front of you? Was Nomadland more of a trending hashtag than the other films they're competing against?
Yeah, for the theme cloud, for results, I didn't see any of the other nominations. And then I think it was today that Nomadland, that one spiked for popularity, I guess.
Cool. Well, I'll be interested to see what that does tonight. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Bryn. I know we'll be revisiting some work with you later. All right, so why don't we jump into the films themselves? So what we did was each student was able to research each film nominated for Best Picture. And we want to see, how people felt about each film and anything interesting that, people were chatting about online globally around each film. So we're going to top it off. Our first one's going to be Minari. And Caleb White, I know, Caleb, you covered Minari. So if you could introduce yourself, Caleb, and tell us what you found regarding Minari this year.
Absolutely. So yeah, my name is Caleb White. I'm from Massachusetts, but I am currently living in Stores at UConn. So for the first Best Picture nomination, we have Minari. As Nikki mentioned, a lot of these films are pretty unknown and much more kind of film festival style, but Minari was definitely the most popular from what I could research. It had the highest number of results online with 107.4 thousand results in the past 30 days, as you can see there, with some pretty substantial conversation arising when different awards were given out. So for example, you can see the first award, they won a SAG award. The director, Lee Isaac Chung, was featured on Trevor Noah in the middle spike there. And then actress Yoo Jung-yoon wins a BAFTA award. So Minari is one of the films that I believe everyone should go watch. Very emotional film, and I think one critic that I saw summed it up the best, saying that it will tear your heart apart and then build it back together better than it was before. So definitely a film that's resonating with a lot of audiences, as you can see worldwide, with the U.S. being very predominant in the discussion, but also Southeast Asia, as it does cover a story about a Korean family moving to the United States and Australia.
Well, I have to think, let's leave the slide up here, Ryan. I have to think that with everything going on in the United States over the last few years regarding immigration and assimilation, a movie like this, it's spot on regarding timing. Also probably tough to watch for some people because it's really resonating. And what I'd like, I wonder if we look at some of the other films as our show goes on this evening, if the other films resonate globally like this one did. That jumps out at me. And also the sentiment. When we look at social
Very
media
high.
sentiment, this is really positive. We usually, it's usually most of it's neutral, and then there's a little positive and negative mix, but this is highly positive. People think highly of this film, obviously.
This is also an A24 production film, so it's very beautiful and very great, cinematography and what they're known for. So definitely one that I recommend watching.
So the cinematography, it's a different look, Caleb?
Yeah, it's produced by A24, which is known for a lot of their very artsy films. They've done some really interesting ones over the year with kind of very nice aesthetics to them. So this fits right in, and it's a really great movie. I think it's definitely going to be a favorite tonight for Best Picture as well.
I think it'll be really interesting to see, Caleb, if Minari is able to leverage the momentum from Parasite's win last year, which was a South Korean film, and the first time that we saw a foreign language film take that category, or if it's going to hurt them with Academy voters who are looking for something different this year.
Absolutely. I did see Parasite mentioned quite a few times in just some mentions that I saw about the movie. So definitely something that is on people's mind.
Cool. Hey, thank you, Caleb. Caleb, I know we're going to come back to you in a little while about the location. I've got the red carpet show on behind me here, and I'm interested to see what you're seeing about the location this year, because it's not the usual location shoot.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next movie. Ryan, you covered The Father. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name's Ryan, and I'm from Storrs, Connecticut, home of the University of Connecticut. Caleb, I just wanted to mention for your movie, speaking of levity, the grandmother role in Minari was probably the most comedic role of any of the movies that are nominated tonight. And so she's definitely someone to watch for winning Best Supporting Actress tonight at the awards. But my movie is called The Father, and it stars Anthony Hopkins, and it is the story of an aging man who is suffering with dementia. And so it's based on a play, and it is told entirely through the point of view of Anthony Hopkins' character. So it is told with memory loss, confusion, and it sort of becomes a puzzle for the viewer to piece together what memories are true, what are not, what he's getting confused about. So it's a very interesting film, and hasn't been talked about very much at all on social media. But what people are talking about online is Sir Anthony Hopkins. And I'm going to share my screen. So Sir Anthony Hopkins is up for Best Actor tonight. And although Chadwick Boseman is favored to win the Best Actor award, I would say that Anthony Hopkins is a close second. He won the British Academy Award on April 12th, which does make him a potential dark horse tonight for Best Actor. But a couple of the other things that I just wanted to share about him on social media is he has embraced the use of TikTok at 83 years old. And the video that you're seeing in the corner is him dancing, which had over 4 million likes on the channel. So he's definitely just sort of this beloved actor that people really can't get enough of ever since Silence of the Lambs. And so what you see on the right-hand side on the screen that I found interesting is in social media, there is less than 0% negative sentiment about Sir Anthony Hopkins. It's either all positive or neutral. Like, no one is talking about anything negative regarding his performance or him as a celebrity. So I thought that was interesting for The Father.
Yeah, Ryan, that's really interesting. You never see that on social media.
Right. Yeah. We usually see, likes of maybe 20% or something like that, and then some sort of negative. But, Sir Anthony Hopkins is just one of those actors that seems to resonate with everyone.
That's an interesting observation. The movie itself, like I went to look at it last night with Ann Byrne. I'm like, I can't watch this because I have an aging father and I just don't want to go there. And but the Anthony Hopkins angle, you know, people love him, you know, 83 years old, he's on TikTok. From what you're sharing, maybe he is a dark horse or a favorite to win himself tonight.
Yeah, and John, I think it's interesting too, from looking at it from that perspective, a lot of the Academy voters are traditionally older, and they've definitely tried to add a lot more diversity. But I think the fact that he is the oldest actor to ever be nominated in this category, there's a novelty element that I think he is going to capture some of the older voters in the Academy. And I actually think it would have been in the bag if he hadn't already won in the past with Silence of the Lambs.
Well,
But
I can really see that, right? If he had never won before this, they would have given him this one, right?
exactly.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Cool. All right. Thank you, Ryan. That was interesting.
Yes.
All right, let's go to our next film, Judas and the Black Messiah. Megan, you covered that one.
Yep. So my name is Megan Foley, and I'm from the greater Boston area. And a little bit about Judas and the Black Messiah, which is nominated for Best Picture. It depicts the true story of Fred Hampton and the FBI infiltration of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party in the late 1960s. And so far, buzz around the film has been talking about the all-Black producing team, the actors within the film winning various awards this year, as well as comments of the producer talking about the hostile attitudes towards Black filmmakers in Hollywood, and then how the SAG Awards this year made history with all 4 film acting awards going to people of color. And one of the actors for this film, who plays Fred Hampton, the chairman of the Black Panther Party, actually won the award for Best Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture for the film, and dedicated his SAG Award win to Chadwick Boseman, who was his fellow, one of his fellow actors in Black Panther. And he also appeared on SNL after his win and gave a clever monologue about his British background, racism in England versus America, the Meghan Markle interview, and shouted out his big family in Uganda. In total, Daniel Kaluuya won a Golden Globe Award, Critics' Choice, SAG, and BAFTA awards. So he got a lot of nominations and a lot of wins for this movie, as well as many of the other actors in the film. And the all-Black producing team, pictured in the middle there, that is Charles King, Shaka King, and Ryan Coogler. And although they acknowledged the importance of their nominations for this film, they did wrestle with the honor that excluded so many, stating, why did it take 93 years for there to be 3 Black producers nominated for an Academy Award? So it was more of a bittersweet moment for them. And additionally, the film has surpassed the 1985 Color Purple to become the film with the highest number of Black Oscar nominees in history, which is 10, nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Original Screenplay, and Best Original Song. And overall, earning the historic acknowledgement from the Academy provokes some complex reactions for the producers, a mix of gratitude for future Black filmmakers, but also reluctance to ascribe too much meaning to the newly admiring taste of the industry that has long shut out Black movies.
You know, once again, what's jumping out at me, Megan, we're what, 3 movies into our coverage. The seriousness of the topics, the relevance in some way or another of each film to what's going on in the world today. And also when I look at, you know, some of the data you're showing, not a lot of negative sentiment. People are very positive. So Nikki, to me, it feels a lot like a Sundance festival where the movies are high quality, on topic, deep meaning movies, but not the typical Oscar, fun, James Bond, Star Wars, nothing like that. These are all very serious movies, and they all seem to be well received.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think definitely the most diverse Oscars that we've ever seen. And we're seeing a lot of diversity with the cast and representation. And I think they take that very seriously too, as to their portrayal and the type of films that are going out there. So there's a level of authenticity that I think we haven't seen before with these different roles and the entire team that is backing them. Like a lot of times you would see movies about slavery that were made by an all-white team. And so it's very interesting that now we're seeing these stories being told from a perspective that is very authentic and very true to that experience.
Yeah, well, I know we're going to get to later in the show, we're going to talk about the marketing aspect, streaming versus the typical theaters, etc. And I'm wondering at the end of the day, I mean, I'm looking at the sentiment. People seem to like these movies so far. So I'm wondering if eventually they can find a way to market these and make a little bit more money than they've made so far. All right. Thank you so much, Megan. The next movie is MANK, which I almost watched last night because I'm a big fan of Citizen Kane, but it's another deep movie. Michael, I know you covered MANK for us. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you found about MANK?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, my name is Michael Modica. I'm from Shawn, Connecticut, but I'm currently living in Stores right now. So to speak on like earlier topics with involving MANK, it's definitely a film that follows deep themes of depression and what actually is to go into writing a screenplay and what it's like in Hollywood. The film takes place in the 1930s and is recorded through 100% black and white, just to give the feel of a 30s movie and sort of pay homage to that time.
Ryan, do we give you a slide?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is what I found with MANK. If we look at the sentiment, we can see that there is positive sentiment, 30.6, but you look at the negative compared to the other movies, and you can sort of see how this may play a role into what was talked about earlier with movies being too dark for the time period that we are living in right now. We look at results on the bottom, and we can see that it has been trending upwards towards the Oscars, involving discussion around them, but nothing really too big. And what I also found with this was some of these other humps right here are it's from like Korean Twitter, where they have the word with in their tweets, so it sort of throws off the results here. Another interesting thing I did find was that authors and writers are by far the number one top occupation for viewers of this movie. Now, I assume that is attributed to the fact that it is about writing a screenplay, and not only about that, it sort of goes more into detail about what it's actually like to be one of these authors with the stress of Hollywood, along with deadlines and trying to create a sort of perfect piece that you could be proud of and sort of show.
So Michael, did you have the opportunity to watch this film?
I did watch a little bit of it. I sort of I got a little way in, but I sort of gave up on watching it. It wasn't really sort of my cup of tea, I guess.
So I know it's about the tension between Mr. Mankiewicz and Orson Welles in producing and directing and writing this film when they made Citizen Kane back in the day, which has been over the decades, people still consider it one of the best films, if not the best ever made. But apparently there was a lot of tension in creating this. So when I look at your data, Michael, what I'm seeing is, I don't know if they marketed it a lot. I don't know if it resonated with people. I think as funny as it sounds, your feedback right now might be, relevant. It's not hitting home with the younger generation, but if you're a Hollywood reporter, if you're someone who cares about Hollywood history, this movie probably is interesting to you.
Yeah, I think that's a
Right?
great point, John, because and I think it's telling that Michael wasn't able to finish it. But
Yeah,
the reality is that films about the industry are always catnip for Academy voters. It's a very narcissistic group of people and they love seeing content about themselves. So it almost doesn't matter for some of these films if it's resonating with other audiences. The bigger question is with this more diverse group of Academy voters, if they are influenced in the same way by content that is about Hollywood and has that kind of nostalgia feel that that is really catnip for them. They love this type of content.
yeah. No,
And David Fincher too. A lot of the voters are huge fans of him. It's interestingly the most nominated film at the Oscars this year.
wow. And I look at the marketing material. It looks like a throwback, black and white of the traditional Casablanca, Citizen Kane, which appeals to me. I love it. But does it appeal to the masses to make a lot of money and get a lot of attention and get a lot of a buzz? Maybe not, especially this year. Very cool. All right. Thank you, Michael. All right. Next up is one of them, as we were talking about earlier, one of, if not the most talked about movie, which may win tonight, Nomadland. And I know we have Danielle. Danielle, you had the fortune to cover Nomadland. What did you see?
Hi, yes. So my name is Danielle McMurtry. I'm also from Boston, Massachusetts. So I was tasked with researching the movie Nomadland, which follows the life of Fern, who's a recent widow looking to make ends meet after losing her partner, home, and job. But in the process, she discovers more about herself and the world around her than she thought. So over the past month, Nomadland has actually been creating a lot of conversation and play on social media, mainly because it's being mentioned as one of the possible factors to explain why China has chosen not to stream the Oscars for the first time in 52 years. So after the director, Chloe Zhao, won the Golden Globe for her film in February, people in China shared their excitement on social media sites, and media outlets praised and congratulated her as well. But after she won, news started to surface about comments she made in past interviews, including a December 2020 interview with an Australian news site stating that the US is now my country, which some Chinese readers angrily interpreted as saying that she had turned her back on China. The site published a correction because she actually was misquoted, and she originally said the United States is not my country, not the US is now my country. So regardless of the news sites making these retractions and corrections to their articles, it had already caused a lot of online users and citizens in China to no longer support her or the film, which also gained the attention of government officials who decided to no longer allow any mention of Nomadland in the country. So promotional materials for the film disappeared and are no longer be able to be found online. And the original release date for the film in the country was April 23rd, but that has since been canceled, and it currently has no set date of arrival on their streaming services. So as you can see in the visual there, because of the country's decision to erase the film and any mention of it, the conversation on social platforms has been mainly dominated by the US. And I found that 98% of the posts and content have come from the United States, and with China only generating 1.1% of content.
Wow.
So I thought that was one of the bigger points that came across my screen, because I thought it was insane that, or crazy that for the past 52 years, the Oscars have been, you've been able to watch them in
the country, and now you're no longer able to.
So they're not streaming the Oscars in China at all tonight on any platform, any network, and nothing. It's not.
No, there's talk about having them. There's talk. They were speaking about having an edited version be released post Oscars. So they would edit it and then post it.
You know what I also see that I see a trend now. We've been looking, I think this is our 5th movie we've looked at. All of you are showing something that the movie gets talked about when either A, win an award, or B, make a big announcement on something like the Today Show. And then it drops right off again. And I often wonder, we'll take a look at this not only tonight, but maybe in the coming days, why some of these distributors right after that moment don't market the heck out of these movies, because they've got some traction, they've got people talking about it on social media, and there's the moment on social media to really start engaging. You've got a lot of buzz, but I'm looking at every slide here, every piece of data, and they win an award, goes up, they're on a show, it goes up, boom, nothing the next morning.
Another, yeah, just to add on to that, and what Nikki had mentioned before about box offices and the growth. Another article that came across my screen was that included a comment from the vice chairman of the Shanghai Film Association that said that even though the film if the film were to be released in the Chinese mainland, it may not do well at the box office. And he said that's most likely caused by Western values that director Zhao included in her film. And I researched more into that, and I found a lot of the conversations surrounding the film also supported that point, that because of her Western values that she included, it would not necessarily be the most popular.
Nikki, you would know better than me. I'm assuming that China is a huge market for Hollywood, and something like this going on, I wonder what the long-term effects are.
Yeah, it's a massive market for Hollywood in general, but there is a limited number of films that they accept every year, and it's definitely more of the commercial fare that comes through. It's why studios will look to international audiences and their tastes and interests when they're making superhero films and big budget action blockbusters, because that's really driving box office gross for those films. So I actually don't know how well this one would have done anyways. It is interesting that we have 2 female directors who are nominated, which is a first. Also, 70 women received 76 nominations this year, which is another record. And then for me with Nomadland, what's the most interesting is that this is clearly the front runner. And it's definitely not your typical Hollywood heavyweight. Like, right? This would be the film that's normally an upset, but not the one that it's not the horse that's usually in the race for all of them.
Yeah, I totally get it. Wow. And as we, if the viewers are watching, as we go through each movie, you can really see this is not your typical Oscar season at all. All right. Thank you so much, Danielle. Appreciate it. Good coverage. So Bryn, back to you. You covered Promising Young Woman. What's that about, and what'd you find out?
Yeah, so Promising Young Woman is a thriller about a young woman traumatized by a tragic event in her past. And throughout the movie, she seeks out vengeance against those who crossed her path. I really enjoyed this movie. It was definitely one of those movies where you finish it and you're just kind of like sitting there and you're not able to think about anything else. Like days afterwards, you're just like, it kind of just hits you in a way where it just strikes you emotionally. And kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning with what's going on now and like the trial of Chicago 7. And I think this film as well, like this film coming out with the Me Too movement, that's something to be noted as well. But this film is nominated for 5 Oscars this year. Definitely a big film to keep an eye out for tonight. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. A film has not won Best Picture as well as Best Actress since $1 Million Baby in 2004. And the last film to win all three categories, Best Picture, Actress, and Writing, was in 1998 for the film Shakespeare in Love. And then lastly, kind of like Nikki mentioned before, first time in history for 2 female directors to be nominated in that category, which is super awesome, because the one director was from Nomadland, and then the second director was from Promising Young Woman. All these different categories I'll be looking out for tonight for this film for sure. There'll be either a lot of like groundbreaking moments in Oscar history, but for this film as well. And then before the Oscars, this film has been recognized and winning a few awards already. On the graph I displayed, you can see peaks in conversation, kind of like you mentioned, John, like about when they win awards, it peaks the conversation. They won Best Original Screenplay for the British Academy Film and TV Awards on April 11th. It also peaked in conversation when the lead actress in this film, Carey Mulligan, won Best Female Lead for the Independent Spirit Awards on the 22nd. And then lastly, that peak in between those 2 victories for this film, Promising Young Woman offered a free online screening of this movie. Obviously with COVID and the pandemic, it's changed the way that we watch our films. So I think this was definitely a smart move on their part. It brought the conversation up and then the engagement up for this film on social media after they did that. So I think that was really awesome of them to do that.
Yeah, I like that move. And last year in our sports and entertainment class, we talked about ways that Hollywood could get people to watch more films leading up to the Oscar show, because we used to think about the Oscar show and we were analyzing it. Not as many people were watching it anymore. And one of the ways that the class had come up with was do some free online screening. Let people watch it for free on Netflix or Amazon or whatever the streaming platform is. Get them watching it. So I love that point. The other thing I loved in your data, Bryn, was, boy, nobody had a neutral opinion about this movie. It was 80% positive, 20% negative. It's like no neutral. It really stirred a lot of emotion, which tells me if I'm marketing this movie, boy, this might do well in theaters. It might do well in a lot of areas. Real marketable film, it looks like to me.
Yeah, absolutely. This one has the crossover potential. And I think the other interesting thing, Bryn, when you're pointing out Carey Mulligan's Critics' Choice and Spirit wins, when you look at all of the actresses who have been nominated in this category, Andra Day won the Golden Globe, Frances McDormand won the BAFTA, Viola Davis won SAG. You are seeing it spread out across the board. And so I'm not foreseeing a sweep in any of these categories the way that you often see with the Oscars. It's going to be very interesting to see who takes these wins.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super, super interested to see what will happen.
Bryn, great coverage. Thank you so much. All right, Carson, you covered Sound of Metal, and I know this is actually an interesting film. Once again, this, our theme of the year, it feels like a Sundance film. It feels like a interesting, very interesting topic. What'd you find out?
Absolutely. So I'm Carson Fitzgerald. I'm from Middletown, Connecticut, currently living at Stores. So yeah, like you said, it's a piece of art, and it's like kind of that Sundance film feel. So Sound of Metal is a movie about a heavy metal drummer whose life is thrown into free fall when he begins to lose his hearing. So after doing some research, I found about 80,000 results on the topic of Sound of Metal. And the main things I want to look at are the hashtags, hashtag Spirit Awards, hashtag BAFTAs, and then the hashtag Oscars So White. So the first kind of things that I saw were this, as you mentioned before, that talk about previous award shows and nominations and like winners. And that kind of foreshadows what we're going to maybe see tonight. And that's getting people really excited to talk about, hopefully seeing that translate into who's going to win as well. So the first one is hashtag Spirit Awards with 1.7 thousand results. And the movie won Best Male Lead, Best Supporting Male, and Best First Feature. So that was a spike on April 11th when those were announced. And people are getting really excited to see maybe those translate into tonight. And then the second hashtag in award show was the BFATAs. And the movie won Best Sound and Best Editing. So I thought that was really cool and hopefully foreshadows for tonight. Because as I said before, the movie is really like a piece of art. And it is about the deaf community and using sound in that editing to tell that story and make it really authentic is something that makes this movie really unique. And that award for the BFTAs is really deserving for this movie. And then finally, we see the hashtag Oscars So White with 1.2K results. So what this article that I have on screen here basically is talking about is hoping this movie can have a movement and make a movement of disabled people in this community. So in the article, it says traditionally in Academy Award nominated movies, people with disabilities appear only when an actor seeking an Oscar-worthy role plays one on screen. That has led some disabled people to feel like they're stealing our stories. So basically the movement that was created, and I'm really glad after watching this movie and seeing that and seeing it translate into the conversation, people are saying they want diversity, they want representation, but they want their stories to be told in an authentic way. And this was done through the character of Ruben, which was really cool to see.
So it's a great topic. It's a great story. I would think, on a night like the Oscars, this would be an opportunity for them to market this a lot. And, I guess, Nikki, we're going to not only, we'll see what goes on tonight, we'll talk to our insider out in Hollywood, but there's got to be a way that they can market some of these great topics, even in a year like a COVID-19 year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that the Oscars So White hashtag was prevalent because I thought it was all but disappeared this year, and especially with Sound of Metal. I have an affinity for this one because Darius Martyr, the writer director, went to my high school. And they ended up shooting the movie in Boston. So you guys may recognize a lot of the locations. But Jeremy Lee Stone, who was one of the actors who's nominated, he is a deaf actor and was the one who was instructing Riz Ahmed on he had to learn sign language and that whole process. But that, I think that will continue to be a debate about disabilities and the portrayal of disabilities. I mean, I had a run-in with the MPAA at one point with a film that we had because they wanted to give it a PG-13 rating because they felt that giving it a PG, there were people with or people portraying mental disabilities, and they thought that would make their children feel uncomfortable to see that on screen without some sort of a disclaimer. So there was a long way to go. That was probably 5 years ago. And I think we're making some strides in that direction, but it is interesting to see what people are talking about with this film.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that too, the hashtag Oscars So White. I kind of was wondering where that came from and when that was started. And it said April Rain launched like this campaign in 2015. So to see it like come back, I think it's really like emphasizing the point that they don't want it to be something that's forced and that's just included because someone told them to. It wants to be kind of authentic and sharing these stories in like a true light, which is, I think, what the movie did.
Cool. Thank you, Carson.
Yeah.
Good story.
One of the coolest things about this movie for me was, you always hear of this award category, best sound design and best sound mixing. And you're like, okay, let's get to the next award that's sort of interesting. And in this category, I felt like this movie, the sound mixing and sound design was a character that was telling this story. And so tonight I would be shocked if it doesn't win the Academy Award, because it played such an important role for the character of Ruben as he slowly starts to lose his hearing. So yeah, very cool.
Nice. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Carson. All right, our last movie, Grace. You covered Trial of the Chicago 7, and as I was saying before we went on air tonight, I'm the only one here who lived through that live because I'm so old. So I was fascinated by this movie to see how they depicted what I watched when I was in elementary school. Grace, what did you find?
Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm Grace. I'm from West Hartford and I covered the trial of Chicago 7. It's a period piece. This actually happened. It's a group of anti-Vietnam War protesters that were put on trial for inciting riots. I found it really interesting to look at the data. What's the conversation going on? Because we've kind of touched on this, but there are a lot of parallels that are going on today in our society with the movements for racial justice and riots and peaceful protests, and also law enforcement. So a lot of layers to this. So these are the results over time. And there was a spike. April 1st, this tweet I have at the bottom, a woman tweeted, "We're not going to jail because of what we did. We're going to jail because of who we are." The Trial of Chicago 7. That's a quote from the movie. And she hashtagged freedom for Umar Khalid. I put his picture on the right there. He's actually from India, but he's a young activist who is protesting against hate, and he is actually now in jail for inciting riots. So when this tweet was tweeted, there was a dip in sentiment. It dropped down because that incited a lot of emotion in people, this parallel to something going on today. And I think it's really just telling of the movie and how it crosses over to the conversations going on today and to our world today. It still very much resonates with people.
Yeah, Grace, that what I took away from this movie is, again, let's just talk about the marketing aspect. This is such a relevant film as to the world we live in today. So your generation could watch this film and the various pieces of it, the various points that are being made, you can resonate, it should resonate with you. You're hearing the same lines, the same angles, the same accusations that you hear today. And this all started, 50 years ago. And an emotional movie that they could market the heck out of, I would think, because of all that.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. It's a fascinating movie from that angle. And I would think, Nikki, this is just a lot of these movies, even though they're dark and deep and not fun, you should be able to market these. They're on point.
Absolutely. I mean, they all have an interesting angle, and so far, as you mentioned, John, it's fascinating to see how much positive buzz we are seeing around this, because again, Oscar fare tends to not be very commercial, and will often get panned by broader, more commercial audiences. Right. I think again, because of the subject matter, people are being a little bit more sensitive in how they're reviewing these and keeping more of an open mind. I think this pandemic has opened everyone's minds across the board as far as how we're positioning ourselves and how we're approaching these films and what we're thinking about. It's true for influencers as well across the board for these movies. So it's been fascinating seeing the reactions on all of these.
Really has. All right. So great job, everyone. Good coverage of our Best Picture nominees. We're going to switch gears here and go to our next segment. Nikki, I know that you have a special guest. Why don't you introduce her and what the interview was about, and we'll go with that.
Absolutely. So I had a chance to chat with Mandy Rodgers, who is a VP of Client Relations at Think Jam, which is a really great agency that does marketing and publicity. And they've done a lot of Oscar campaigns. And I actually worked directly with Mandy on the Loving Vincent Oscar campaign in 2018 when we were trying to lock in Best Animated Feature. So she has some really exciting and interesting things to say, and I'll have Ryan go ahead and share that.
Cool.
Honestly, every single campaign is so different. But for the basics, you just want to make sure that you're getting the film out there to voters as much as possible and as much as is allowed, which we will talk about the rules and things like that as well. But as many screenings as you can do, as many Q&A events as you can do, you just want to make sure that the voters are really actually getting that insight and feeling connected to the movie so that then they can become your champions on social media, and they can be like brand ambassadors for your film and kind of help spread the word throughout the entire campaign. So that's the biggest thing. But all of that obviously ended up being virtual this year. So this year was virtual screenings, and how does that work? And virtual Q&As, and how does that work? And are people getting tired of Zooms and this and that and the other? And I think, you know, we lost a lot of the excitement of meeting your favorite stars and like seeing filmmakers in person, but we gained being able to have way more people involved in these events, whether they were in New York or in LA or in London or, you know, wherever they were kind of located. You could log on to your Zoom, watch the screening, watch the Q&A. So there was definitely like a toss up, I think, with those basic elements you want to have as far as what happened this year versus previous years. But studios are spending millions of dollars. They still are. What's funny is that, you know, to do a big reception screening event at the London in West Hollywood is like thousands of dollars, but to set up these really nice virtual events is still thousands of dollars. Like, you think there were some savings for sure in certain places, but it wasn't as much of a cost savings as you would assume, just because of all the technology you have to have and kind of what you have to do to offset the fact that things were virtual. So that's one kind of thing. And then the other thing about the campaigns is that, you know, you have to put out advertising across every single area. So whether it's print ads, whether it's billboards around LA, online, social media ads, just all of that has to happen. You have to like run the gamut. And then you also have to kind of craft like what your narrative of your campaign is. So, you know, we've seen in the past where people are nominated a million times and have never won before. And then it becomes like, this is their year, and everyone kind of gets behind, they have to win this year. And that happened with Leonardo DiCaprio a couple years ago. Like, The Revenant was great, but it was also kind of his time to take that home. So you look at those types of campaigns, and then you look at if the film is very timely right now, like if the narrative of that movie or the themes of that movie make sense and resonate this year especially, which I kind of think Nomadland actually is writing a little bit of that, just because everyone's been so secluded and it kind of tells this different story of America. And, you know, so I think that's kind of helped them. And then also just if there's any kind of like underdog story or someone who's never been nominated or some kind of new nominee, you know, like there's always some kind of narrative that needs to be crafted for these awards campaigns to be successful. And then timing, like the timing is so weird because some movies come out the gate and they're like the biggest ones and they ride that wave the whole time. And then some out of nowhere just kind of start gaining momentum and you're not really sure why or what that kind of lightning in a bottle piece is, but timing is really important. And sometimes it starts at film festivals. So like Sound of Metal debuted at, you know, Toronto in 2019 and has been riding that wave this whole time. And then others have been a little bit quieter and, you know, gaining momentum closer in. So yeah, those are kind of the basics you need to think about for an Oscar campaign. You This season has been weird because, the flashy stuff wasn't the same as years past. And again, there's also like so many rules of what people can do. So sometimes something like Nomadland, right, which actually has had a really great campaign from Searchlight, but some of that I think might have even been not awards focused, but they were able to use it to their advantage. So they did some really great mailers of some nice like license plates. They worked with some local businesses for some food drops for the premiere, which was really nice. Put together these really nice kits for people to get excited about it. And I was seeing stuff online where people are like, this is one of the best mailers I've ever gotten. But that kind of stuff you can't do for awards. So it's like how all of that comes together is really interesting, because some of the more creative campaigns you actually can't do directly tied to awards. You have to feed off of, well, this is for the theatrical release, or this is for the Blu-ray release, or this is for something else. And then it all can kind of work together to raise awareness in general for the movie. So Nomadland, I think, did some really cool stuff, but I'm not sure it was for awards specifically, but I think it helped it. And then last year, Parasite was really amazing with what they did on social media. They really took that buzz that happened after that film festival, and then they really just rode the wave of teasing that this movie is so different and out there, and you have to watch it to believe it. It doesn't matter that it's a foreign language. Like, you need to see this movie. It is crazy. Watch it, watch it, watch it. Teasing the suspense, teasing the mystery, and playing on that early critic buzz was really, really important for that movie. And then they won the whole thing, which was really cool. So there are so many rules. And if you want to do one of these campaigns, you definitely need to, read everything, educate yourself, like talk to the right people, make sure you know what the rules are, because there are so many restrictions. I touched on this before, but yeah, there's restrictions on mailers and things like that you can actually gift Academy members. You can send things like books and DVDs and copies of screenplays and CDs for soundtracks, but you can't do much past that. So that's why when you see other mailers, it's usually tied into the film's theatrical release or the film's Blu-ray release or something like that, where they can say, this is marketing the movie to consumers. Of course, there's some kind of like overlap with Academy voters. And then there's also weird things like the amount of minutes that you can have online, which is important for social media, the amount of minutes that you can actually have of the film available to watch online, whether it's a clip here, a clip here, a clip there, can't exceed, I think it's like 10 minutes, right? So you need to make sure that whatever assets you're using, you're kind of reusing the same scenes, and you're being really strategic with what you're revealing about the movie, because that can hurt you later if you want to do an awards campaign. They limit the amount of screening invites that people can get for a movie, or the amount of correspondences that people can get for a movie. And then there's also this really interesting rule where once nominations come out, let's say Brad Pitt is the producer of a movie that's nominated, he cannot appear or support publicly any other nominated movies. So, you always have these kind of fun, oh my gosh, Barbara Streisand loves this movie and she's going to host this event, or Oprah Winfrey just hosted something, for one of the films. And you have to make sure that if you do some of those kind of stunty hosts, that after nominations, none of them are actually involved in any way with any of the nominated movies. So that's another kind of interesting one. But there are so many rules, so make sure that you read up on them all the time. I mean, it's a really good question, because I think that Coco Day was really funny because it was for the Blu-ray, right? So it's like, oh, this is all for the Blu-ray, but it's timed to awards and, whatever. And you don't always have those opportunities for the indie or the S5 movies. I think it's really just, you have to find those champions. You have to find people that are so passionate about your movie. And I think seeing that with Parasite, which Neon is, a decent sized distributor, but still, it was kind of like the little engine that could. And people loved the movie so much. They loved that director so much. They wanted it to really succeed. So I think anyone that has a movie that has that rabid fan base that you can cultivate and that you can get excited and that you can go back to and say, please, you know, help us. And then when you get them excited, then they can talk about it a ton, you know, and that's really helpful. So I think things like that, and then just being really creative with your social strategy, how you tease certain elements of the movie, like making it really exciting, whether it's with the talent that's really big and has a great name, or it's their kind of swan song performance, or whatever that kind of story, you still have to craft that story. And if you can do a really great story, you can break through the clutter of some of the other stuff that's happening with the larger studios. No, it's really interesting. Like, I'm really interested in what happens tonight for the award show because I love watching award shows. I've watched them since I was so little. I would always have my little ballot and I have my checklist and I watch all the things, whether it's Emmys or Golden Globes or whatever. And, you know, some award shows have done everything in COVID really well, and it's been really interesting. And I think even the Emmys did a great job. I think the Grammys did a really interesting job. I think the Golden Globes maybe didn't do as well as we had wanted. So I think the Oscars tonight is going to be really, like, that's part of the main thing I want to watch is like, how do they do it? Like, how do they execute it? And what works and what doesn't work? I hope it does well because I love the Oscars. And I really hope that we're going to see a bounce back next year. I hope that once people are in the swing of what the new normal is, and maybe we're taking some really cool things we learned from COVID times to bring into the new times and making things exciting and having cool hosts or guests or stunts or whatever. I hope all of that comes back more next year. I really do, because I love it so much. So my hope is that this is just a little bit of a decline right now and that we can bolster it back. But I think everyone's going to kind of be watching in the industry with how they do that tonight, how they make it happen, how it looks, what cool things they do, if it feels weird, you know, and what that looks like. Really excited for the whole thing. I really think that Nomadland seems to be the one to take it all. I feel like that will be Best Picture and Best Director. It seems to be going that way. I think the late Chadwick Boseman for sure is pretty much a lock, I would say, and he deserves it. And he was just such a special person. So I'm really, really excited for him. The Best Actress winner is such a toss-up to me right now, and I'm really hoping for Carey Mulligan because we did work on Promising Young Woman, and I love that movie, and I think she's just fantastic. What I really like this year, though, is I think we're going to see a lot of different movies winning, like maybe like 2 to this movie, 2 to this movie, 1 here. I think it's going to be kind of a more varied Oscars than we've had sometimes where there's a distinct sweep. I don't think we're going to have that, which I kind of like. I like to spread the wealth and get a lot of different people up there and mix and match. So I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be a really good show. Worked again on the Blu-ray release. So it was one of those where we were in tandem with the awards teams. We were working with Focus Features, Universal Pictures, and the awards campaign to make sure that everything was in line. We did a ton with talent. I mean, they're amazing and they're so passionate about this movie. We did a really cool takeover of some local LA female-owned coffee shops, which was really fun because in the movie, Carey Mulligan's a barista, and the movie is very light in some ways and then very dark in some ways. So you have to be careful with how you market it. But we got really lucky with finding some amazing female-owned coffee shops who really went out there and did some really cool promotions. We did full takeovers where we sent them branded cups and napkins, and they did themed drinks. So that was really, really fun. Everyone got really excited about that. And then we did a watch party, which was really cool with Hello Giggles. They're a female-focused website. And because the movie does have a lot of very serious themes, they were the best partner to do the watch along with us, where it was for the digital release, and they actually sourced certain articles they published in the past that actually focus on some of the very heavy, serious social themes in the film. And they sent those out to their followers before the movie. So that was really, really great. They were an amazing partner. We had so many amazing female influencers on board watching the movie and responding and having just great discussions about the film itself. And it is also a very timely one with, you know, Me Too and everything happening in Hollywood all the time with women's issues, right? So it was a really, really, really thoughtful and insightful watch party. So I really, really liked that. And everyone had a really good conversation about the movie. So that was great.
Appreciate it.
Of course. And yay, Oscars tonight. Woohoo!
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki, for that interview. And a question jumps up for me when I listen to Mandy, because I learned a lot just from listening to that. Is there a difference between how you can market a movie if it's just for the release, and then how you market a movie if you're trying to win an award?
Yes, absolutely. So when we were releasing Loving Vincent, like one of the things when we acquired the film, we acquired it out of Cannes, which is in the spring, and we were releasing it in the fall. And so what a lot of these awards campaigns are really smart about is when they do the earlier release, they can do an awards marketing campaign along with their Blu-ray release, which is kind of the loophole that Mandy was talking about. And it was a frustration that I experienced. We had separate publicists. We had an awards publicist for Loving Vincent, and we had a national, regional, and grassroots publicist for the actual theatrical release. When you're sending emails to the voting academy, you can only have the title font that you have on your film. And so ours, it was just a signature of Loving Vincent, whereas Coco's, which was the front runner we were up against, was really vibrant and colorful and stood out in those emails. And the other thing was she mentioned Coco Day, which was kind of a loophole because of the Blu-ray release. The mayor of Los Angeles was able to name National Cocoa Day like a few days before voting closed on the Oscars. And we weren't allowed to do any of these events. Like we tried to do a screening where we had a painter who had painted in the film do one of the frames, and she was going to start it outside of the Egyptian and then paint through the movie and then show them the finished result. Couldn't do anything like that. It was very, very strict.
Are the age groups, last question before we move on, because I know we have a lot more to cover. Are the age groups of the voting members all older, or are they all age groups? And I ask because of the impact of social media.
They were much older in the past because it's harder to get into the academy and the PGA. Usually you need to have produced at least 2 films, and then you have to have some nominations from other members. But they let a lot more into the voting academy and a lot of younger voters. So I think that social media is having more of an impact than it ever did before.
Yeah, because I think this is one area where social media is underutilized, is the marketing of these movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially thinking about where the majority of these voters are located, where you're able to do some really targeted marketing that, I mean, when it's Oscars time, it's very traditional marketing. Like you're seeing full page takeovers of the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline and Gold Derby. You're seeing billboards outside. They are very old school in that approach, and I agree that it's very much a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I can see it. Cool. Thank you so much, Nikki. That was very neat.
You're welcome.
All right, we're moving on. Joe Shiro. You covered a lot of your angle here is you covered a lot of animated and other unique angles to this season's awards. So Joe, I'm going to turn over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you did.
Yep, thanks so much, John. I'm Joe Shiro, and I am a senior SMACC analyst here in the SMACC labs, and I have a huge appreciation for my topic today. Us DMD students are no stranger to animation, with 2 of our 8 major concentrations being 3D animation and motion graphics. It's easy to see why the Oscar category of Best Animated Feature is close to all of our hearts, near and dearly. There are 5 fantastic films up for the running tonight, and each one has their own little special piece of uniqueness that could, give them an edge over their competition. But of the 5 nominated movies, there are 2 of which animation enthusiasts have really highlighted as the clear frontrunners towards victory. So as you can see on the screen beside me, I have listed all 5 of the feature nominees. And if we could go to the next slide, I could highlight the first one I will be talking about, which is Apple TV's Wolfwalkers. So kicking off the front-running nominees is Wolfwalkers. This Apple TV exclusive movie blends 2D animation with dynamic visuals, fall colors, and an engaging Irish folklore story. In a time of superstition and magic, Robin, a young hunter, pictured as the young blonde girl in the poster, finds a unlikely friendship when she meets Mabe, a native forest woman who is actually a wolf walker. As you can tell, hijinks ensue, and people love this movie. It's really easy to see why they love this movie, as the only 2D animated piece that is represented in this category. It's really interesting to see how many people have taken to social media to highlight how much they appreciate it. So a few weeks ago, Wolfwalkers won 5 Annie Awards, for one of which being Best Indie Feature. And people absolutely love this movie's art style for its sketchbook-like style, character design, and the story, which once again is rooted deeply into Irish folklore. Fun fact, you can actually see on the Ireland Twitter account that they have highlighted Wolfwalkers as one of their reasons to go to Ireland, because of how deep into the folklore this movie is.
Cool.
However, it's, we can't talk about Wolfwalkers without talking about the conversation that has surrounded this movie and another Best Animated Feature nominee, which is Disney Pixar's Soul. So releasing on Christmas 2020, Soul is the frontrunner for Best Animated Feature. This Disney Plus exclusive movie is a clear example of Pixar animation at their best. This movie stars Jamie Foxx as Joe Gardner, a jazz musician and teacher who lands his shot at getting to perform with one of his jazz heroes. However, things go upside down when Joe ends up in a different realm where he meets 22, played by Tina Fey, and they go on fun adventures where basically Joe has to realize, what his purpose is, what's his, reason for being here. So it's really interesting to see the sentiment around both these movies and how positive and how interested a lot of the online, as I call them, animation appreciators have really taken their stances when it comes to these movies. When it comes to Wolfwalkers, a lot of the talk about that movie is that Soul, as a Disney Pixar movie, Disney Pixar has 2 animated features in this category. So it's really interesting to see that critics are really they're really not really looking at Soul. They are looking at the company and expressing that, this indie film named Wolfwalkers deserves it better. Personally, I see Soul as the clear frontrunner. I freaking loved this movie when it came out. It was really awesome. And I mean, I love both the movies. I watched every one of the Best Animated Features, but if I had to pick my clear winner, it would have to be Soul. But if Wolfwalkers won, I would not be disappointed. If anything, I would be impressed because it's clearly the underdog in this situation. Thanks.
Cool. Joe, I love your enthusiasm for this category. And I think I'm going to watch both of them. I like both of them.
Yeah, I mean, as a teacher, you could definitely relate to, Joe as he's a very good teacher as well. So.
I love it. The other interesting thing with Wolfwalkers, Tom Moore is very well known in animation. His other films, Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea were also nominated for Academy Awards. He has a very distinct style and is very well known, but it is so hard going up against Pixar, especially with a film as solid as Soul. I think Pixar has lost the Oscar in the animation category 3 times, and it has won 10. And those 3, I think it was Monsters, Inc., Cars, and Incredibles 2. So as much as I love seeing the smaller indies take the victory on this, it is so hard going up against Disney as a marketing machine. They do know all of those loopholes and know how to reach Academy. And the other thing is so many of these voters, they don't treat the animation category with the same amount of respect as they do Best Picture. So I've heard voters where I've had meetings with them after the Academy Awards, and they're like, yeah, I just asked my kids which one I should vote for. And obviously Pixar will be the front runner in that case.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see how these movies have been advertising their media as time goes on. And it's really interesting to see the sentiment around a movie like Soul, which many critics have described as a love letter to Black popular culture in New York City, especially much akin to the movie Coco, which we saw the release of just a few years ago. So, yeah.
So, Joe, before I let you go, Joe, on this, when you look at the data, you look at the buzz around both movies, Soul's getting a lot more traction.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting. I feel like Soul has had more overall, and like a very the average talk around Soul has been pretty stable across the last few months. However, it's just really interesting to see these, like, I want to say these online reviewers and like these people with who are influencers in the animation field. They're really coming out to support Wolfwalkers as they see. Once again, I mentioned this earlier, but it seems like they're looking at the company rather than the content, which is kind of a shame when it comes to the work and the art that has gone into.
Yeah, when I look at the content data, what is it, Wolfwalker?
Wolfwalkers, yes, by Apple TV.
A little bit more traction.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised to turn on our platform and see that Wolfwalkers is gaining so much traction, and it's purely off of basically the community coming out and talking about why they appreciate the movie so much. It's interesting to see how Soul had a few spikes in their engagement and their sentiment, because a few of their directors actually came out in distaste towards their products being offered on Disney Plus and not being locked behind Premier Access.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too, because Wolfwalkers is available on Apple TV, and that's it right now. Like, that's the father. I wanted to watch both of those, and I don't have Apple TV. So it's interesting that that's still getting so much traction when you have Pixar and Soul on Disney Plus with over 100 million subscribers.
Well, Grace, we're going to talk about that topic in a few minutes. All right, thanks, guys. Let's keep going. Megan, I know that you did some research on the late Chadwick Boseman and what people are talking about around him on this evening.
Yeah, so Chadwick Boseman is nominated for Best Actor along with Anthony Hopkins for his role in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, where he plays Levy Green, who is a trumpet player. And the story focuses on Ma Rainey, an influential blues singer in 1920 Chicago, and the film is based on August Wilson's play by the same name. Boseman actually died post-production of the film in August of last year from colon cancer, and was very private about the struggle, which sent shockwaves out after his death, as everyone was upset about it. And some of his other notable roles include playing T'Challa in Black Panther, in other Marvel films, and Jackie Robinson in 42, Thurgood Marshall in Marshall, James Brown in Get On Up, and most recently Stormin in Defy Bloods, which came out in 2020. And so the recent buzz around Boseman has discussed his character in the next Marvel film, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier Episode 4, as well as the sequel to Black Panther, as filmmakers revealed that they won't recast his role, but explore the other characters within the universe. And additionally, Ryan Coogler, who was one of the producers behind Judas and the Black Messiah, is the director for the Black Panther films, which is a nice connection to draw. And so Boseman was nominated and won for Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama Motion Picture, as well as the SAG Award for Outstanding Performance by a Male Actor in a Leading Role. And his wife accepted on his behalf and thanked his parents, his ancestors for their guidance, and noted how the late actor would have had something beautiful and inspiring to say, telling that you can. This is actually Boseman's first Oscar nomination, and he is now joining 7 other actors to be nominated for an Oscar after their death. And this puts Boseman in one of the most rare and bittersweet categories, which is the posthumous acting nominee. And regardless of whether Boseman joins Heath Ledger and Peter Finch as one of those 3 winners, his place in Academy Awards history is already secure. As for more recent news, a Netflix special about the actor called Chadwick Boseman, The Portrait of an Artist, was released on April 17th. And that has been gaining some buzz on Twitter. But probably the most momentous thing I saw when I was tracking his engagement was yesterday. There was news about, so 3D artist Andre O'Shea announced that he was commissioned to create an NFT or non-fungible token tribute to Boseman, which is now available for auction through Tuesday, April 27th. And copies of the piece are in the gift bags for this year's Oscar nominees. But across social media, there has been negative comments about how the artist is using Boseman's likeness for profit, as the buy price is $1.2 million. Although 50% of the proceeds are going to charity, the Colon Cancer Foundation. Across the board on social media, people are upset that they feel Boseman's likeness is being exploited, and how this is a poor way to honor his legacy, as there's a negative impact of NFTs and cryptocurrency on the environment as well.
Well, yeah, you can see people are pretty upset when you look at that social media data today. Nikki, is he the favorite tonight, Nikki or Ryan?
Yeah, he absolutely is. The question is whether like Riz Ahmed snuck in and took the Spirit Award. And I think that there may be some votes that people are torn between Riz and Chadwick. And I think that they could pull votes from one another, which like there could be a chance that Anthony Hopkins sneaks in there because of it. But in general, the sentiment a lot of people are having is this is not Chadwick's best performance, but he was an unbelievable actor and an unbelievable person that I think they want to make sure that he gets some sort of award for his contribution to cinema in general.
Yeah, when I look at the data, Megan, I'm not seeing for any of these individuals or movies like these huge spikes or this huge volume. Everything seems pretty average. All right, thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. All right, couple more topics before our show wraps tonight. Grace, you're covering an interesting topic. So the topic is streaming versus the theaters, and how the industry is changing dramatically. Let me ask you guys, be honest now. Be honest. How many of you watch more than one of these films on a, because they're all streaming? How many of you, hands up, watch more than one? So here's my point. Do you guys watch movies at all anymore? Or do you just watch like streaming shows?
Mostly shows. For me personally, I mostly watch lots of reality TV.
I think part of the struggle with like these specific films is they're very exclusive to platforms. Like one of the struggles I was having was Judas and the Black Messiah was on HBO Max, but only for like a matter of 2 weeks or so. So I had to buy it to watch it.
So even if they're streaming everything, and Grace, we're going to get into this, you're going to tell us what you found. It's not as simple as streaming versus theater, because, I don't have that platform. Like Nikki said, she doesn't have Apple TV. So maybe it's easier if it's in the theater.
And I think to your point too, John, how you said earlier, just a lot of us are looking for escapist cinema. And after a long work day, you're either looking for what they call lean back entertainment, where you know what you're seeing or you've seen it before, or something that's a little bit lighter. And so when it comes to the Oscar fair, especially when it's the really heavy stuff, like you have to be in a different mindset to be able to watch that. And I think with everything that's been going on with the pandemic and lives and just stress levels across the board, I think that made it particularly challenging this year.
Totally. All right, cool. Grace, without further ado, I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah, like you guys have said, their streaming platforms are seeming to pop up everywhere these days, and it's only becoming like more and more popular. That's the way people are consuming their entertainment. And with COVID on top of that, it's completely transformed how people are watching movies. So to do an analysis of streaming platforms versus studios, I want to kind of stack up like how are these movies performing on their social media channels in terms of engagement, because I think that's a very valuable metric. This is in no way predicting any winners. I just wanted to see who's getting the most engagement on the social media platforms. And in first place was Minari. And like Caleb had talked about, A24 is a studio that was behind Minari. And then second and third place went to other studios. And then the Netflix films, the streaming platform films were more at the bottom. So I thought this was very interesting. It didn't seem to, the streaming platforms didn't seem to be taking over in any way, but it would be very interesting to see like a Netflix own social media channel I know does very well on Instagram. So how that can play a role too. So this was my analysis of who's talking about which films on social media.
So but leave this slide up for a minute, Ryan. Grace, Nick, and Nikki, how could I watch Minari? Where is that showing?
Minari, I believe it's on Amazon Prime. I think actually all of these films can be streamed. So that's a very interesting dynamic this year, that it's just the way that people are able to watch. So I believe Minari is Amazon Prime and a few more other streaming platforms.
Yeah, because the more I get into this, I think a couple of years ago when we were thinking about this, we thought quote unquote streaming, everybody gets to watch it easier. But I'm looking at the slide, Grace, and these films can be seen, one's on this platform, another's on that platform. It gets so diverse. And look at the numbers you were showing. These numbers are not big numbers.
No, Minari within the past 30 days had 181,000 mentions, and that they were by far the greatest.
Yeah, and literally, we were looking at numbers when it comes to politicians or COVID topics or sports. Numbers go through the roof into the millions easily.
Yeah.
These are really small numbers, and I'm wondering if there's what we're gonna if I'm in a boardroom in the next few weeks, Nikki, like what are we talking about when we talk about making a movie? How much we're going to spend on the movie? How much we're going to market the movie? Because these numbers are small.
Yeah, and I should specify that those numbers are it's the total actions taken on their social media channels. So they also may be using different modes of marketing, but that's what's going on their social media channels.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, we're seeing revenues dropping for feature films, and I think even more so now that people are watching so much content on SVOD and it feels free to them. So when you're actually asked to transact, it's like, well, I don't want to spend $4 to watch this movie when I have all this free content to choose from. So we're definitely seeing a drop in revenues and P&A spend for these different films. And what's interesting about the ones you were looking at, Grace, A24 is probably the best company in film when it comes to creating a brand and having a really distinct personality and voice. So much so that people will follow A24 and will watch a movie just because it has A24 on it. There's really no other distributor or production company in the space that is as iconic as they have become, really targeting these artistically adventurous 20-somethings. And so it is interesting that A24 is still able to generate some word of mouth. But I'd say second to A24 is really Netflix and building an amazing social media presence and personality. So to see them at the bottom, it just goes to show, like, is there just too much saturation that's happening right now where all of these films aren't able to stand out?
Yeah, what jumps out at me when I look at these numbers from everybody's work tonight is the saturation. So many choices, like what you guys just shared with me. You watch reality TV, you watch things like Game of Thrones, then you throw in movies, then there's sports. There's so many choices that the saturation level is overwhelming. And if you're funding a movie, I guess this has got to be a whole new game now, a whole new game.
And then just one more thing.
Go ahead.
The other topic that I covered regarding like streaming platforms and COVID and how that's shaped this year.
Right.
I looked at the effects on movie theaters. So I found some interesting data to kind of represent this. I wanted to kind of zoom in on this iconic theater that is closing down in Los Angeles, the Cinerama Dome. There was a CNN article that was posted around April 10th saying the Oscars suddenly have a bigger mission, help save movie theaters. So that'd definitely be interesting to see if they mention movie theaters and keeping that alive. And then this chatter that's happening with that big spike about the Cinerama Dome, it's very sad sentiment, very emotional. And then I looked into what is the age group that's talking about this. So almost 50% of this group talking is 25 to 34-year-olds. And then the next being 18 to 24-year-olds. I'm assuming that's lower because the 18 to 24-year-olds are very used to the streaming platforms now. Maybe for the 25 to 34-year-olds, it's very nostalgic to think of the movie theaters. So that's the group that really cares about this issue.
Great. That's a great slide, Grace. And I think as someone who loves the movie theater, I think shows when we ask, will the Academy and the Oscar show carry on? I have to think going forward that there's got to be some thinking around saving theaters. That if we're all just at home on our couch watching streaming and everything's the same, whether it's Yellowstone or a blockbuster that should be in a theater, I just don't. I think we're missing out on something. There's something about going to a theater that makes a big difference. That's just me. Maybe I'm too old. All right. Thank you, Grace. All right. Last topic before we wrap. So, Caleb, I've been watching behind me the red carpet. You've been following. They have a new location this year because of COVID. What's the buzz about what's going on with the new location?
So for anyone that's not aware, the Oscars this year moved to Union Station in Los Angeles in an effort to do an in-person event, which, as we've seen covering other award shows, they've typically been socially distant, virtual, with artists zooming in, things like that. So this year they made a big push to do this in person. And it definitely seems as if COVID isn't as at the front of everyone's minds as it has been for past award shows. On the left side there is just our COVID data. So 4.9 thousand mentions, that was only today, of the Oscars and events happening tonight. And then when I applied the COVID filter for any terms that mentioned COVID in unison with Oscars, you can see I only got 98. So although that has spiked 63% today, we're seeing a much larger spike in just Oscars buzz overall. And the whole mention of COVID isn't as high as we've seen for other events in the past. Going off that, although there's only 98. There's been of those 98, massive spike in negative sentiment. As you can see at the bottom there, there's a 230% increase in negative sentiment. So there are people that are concerned, and any mentions of COVID don't seem to be great, but definitely not the majority at all.
So Caleb, before we go further, are you seeing that people are concerned about the fact that there's some in-person activity going on at Union Station, or are they just upset because of COVID times, just in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think reason I kind of grouped these two together is because I assumed that a lot of the COVID discussion would be about or a lot of the Union Station mentions would be about COVID as a factor, but that really didn't seem to be the case. It seems that location, there was a lot more issues people had with it other than COVID. So as you can see in that graph, the mentions of Union Station obviously are pretty consistent because it is a functioning station, but they have been increasing today. And that being said, I want to look at the sentiment. So there's a significant negative sentiment and neutral, as these two aren't.
And it also seems like, Caleb, not a lot of chatter about Union Station today. Nikki, I wonder how many people really know that it's at Union Station.
Yeah, it was nothing crazy. The most interesting part, I think, for me is that I sorted it by negative sentiment here, and you can see all the negativity is coming, or almost all the negativity is coming from Los Angeles there. So it's definitely the locals. I'm sure I saw that Amtrak had to release a lot of statements talking about minimum delays for every train on those routes today, as well as there was a large issue where they had to displace a lot of a homeless population that were at that station. So there was a lot of buzz about that as well.
I'm really curious to see what kind of show we're going to see in a half hour. What are they really doing? How are they pulling this off? How will it be different than the other shows that were just giant Zoom meetings? Because I've seen on the red carpet, I've seen some people there in their outfits and interviewing on the E! Network. And I'll end with this for my segment. It's as if people don't even know it's at Union Station. It just seems like it's dull. Like, oh yeah, another Zoom award show.
Yeah. Well, they also postponed it by 2 months, which that's the fourth time in Oscar history that's ever happened. I think one of the times it was a flood and they literally couldn't go. And then there was the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King and an attempted assassination on Reagan. But otherwise, it's like the show goes on. And I think part of the delay these past 2 months, people have kind of moved on from the Oscars topic.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. All right. Any last words, Ryan, Nikki, anybody?
Well, I was tracking the hashtags and refreshing the page to see like what other films like might be mentioned, and they did update a lot. I still see Nomadland like having like the most mentions related to the Oscars in that hashtag. Minari was also another one mentioned. Promising Young Woman, Judas and the Black Messiah, Sounds of Metal. And one that we didn't talk about was Love and Monsters I saw on social media, because I think one of the actors has a big social media presence. So that's why it was very much on there. And then also ones that weren't hashtags but were trending words I saw were Father, Chicago, Bozeman, Mank, Mulligan, and Soul. So I thought that was interesting to see, because we talked about Chad with Bozeman being possibly nominated as like one of the actors, and then the actress and Promising Young Woman, Mulligan.
Emily, are you looking at the theme cloud right now, or are you looking at the hashtag trends?
I'm looking at the theme cloud for the hashtag Oscars.
Right. So which one is getting the biggest buzz right now?
I think I have to refresh it again to see, because it keeps on changing. But
people finally are talking about the Oscars 30 minutes before the show.
It seems like it's Nomadland, but there are a lot of other ones that are like, they're all typically like kind of on the lower side numbers, but No Man Land does seem to be the one that's being mentioned the most.
Okay, cool. Well, I imagine as the show goes on and the marketing really takes off after, that'll be something, Nikki. After tonight, does somebody get a bump? Do they start marketing because the rules are off? And do people start watching on streaming in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, if this was if we were in a normal theatrical window, a lot of times these films are back in theaters right now for
Right.
the Oscars, and then they continue playing, which you can see a decent amount of gross from that. So that we may be seeing some of that. But whenever you have Oscar or Academy Award winning talent or films, the distributor, the exhibitor, everyone's going to be promoting it and rebranding their social materials with that on it.
Cool. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. So with that, thank you, everyone. You guys were wonderful tonight. It was great to see everybody dressed in their Oscar gear and out of their typical COVID wear. You guys were awesome. And I think that's a wrap. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the show.
Thank you,
Good
John.
night.
Take care.
Thank you.